Welcome back to Boiler House Garage and to our 6 monthly retest of Esso Synergy Supreme 99. This is the first test of Esso Petrol since the US trade deal last year that unfortunately meant the UK has vastly increased its import of American bioethanol, which will almost certainly be contaminating our previously ethanol-free petrols. Right, so before we start, I do just have to say yet another huge thank you to everyone who's currently subscribed, as there are about 2,000 more of you since the last video. That really blew up and became my most viewed at 126,000 to date. And also to welcome another channel member. I have two now, so I'm well on my way of calling myself a proper YouTuber, amongst other things. So another massive thank you to Tom Davis. I'll try and stick to the same no-nonsense formula as the last video to hopefully fire these out a little more frequently, and having a video duration of under 8 minutes is the current limit, I believe, to not have adverts right in the middle of them, which I think helps the views also. In any case, this video will have timestamps, so if you want to skip straight to the test results here, then please see them in the description or along the time bar thing below. As I mentioned in the intro, the US trade deal has now sadly increased the UK's import of bioethanol that our own production thankfully struggled with, which meant we could still have ethanol-free super unleaded in most parts of the UK. As results in the last video found 2.5% ethanol in Shell V-Power, it appears those days could well be over. But I'll be retesting all of the previous brands we found to be ethanol-free over the last year or so to not only see the composition of each, so we can make some better consumer choices and see if and how that changes over time, but to also hold out some hope of maybe still finding a zero ethanol supplier in the UK. Since the US trade deal, we're now importing 1.4 billion litres of bioethanol from the US annually, and to put that in perspective, the UK uses 17.3 billion litres of petrol each year, so the US supply of ethanol is a little over 8% of our total petrol consumption. No surprise then that we'll be seeing more of this crap in our petrol over the coming years, and all in the name of a bullshit political policy based on a nonsensical and pseudoscientific environmentalist theory. The US has been the largest producer of bioethanol, accounting for over half of global supply for decades, and for the past 2 years produces twice the amount that Brazil does, which was surprising to me. On the topic of South America, you may have seen in the news that President Trump has literally removed Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan communist dictator, from the country. And if we put aside the supposed motive of drugs trafficking charges and say with little doubt that it was to target the country's oil reserves, then we have to question the ethics of forcefully extraditing a complete rotter from a country and its people he is objectively failing, even with their support and the fact that reserves have had American investment effectively stolen by the previous Chavez regime, the biggest of those being ExxonMobil, who use the trade name Esso in the UK. A fun fact, Esso is what became of John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil, Esso originally standing for Eastern State Standard Oil. Exxon have actually stated that Venezuela is currently uninvestable and aren't willing to put up anywhere near the $100 billion President Trump is seeking to have invested in this aggressive acquisition. I would be interested in hearing any of your thoughts on this topic in the comments. So back to the regular issue at hand and to testing how much American corn alcohol is contaminating our petrol, if any, and if so, what octane the remaining petrol has after extraction. So we'll be starting with our usual test of pouring 300 millilitres of water through 700 millilitres of the test petrol. Any amount above 300 at the separation line, we can determine how much ethanol is present in the petrol, if any. If there is no ethanol, the separation line will remain at 300 millilitres. Now we'll just give that 5 minutes to settle as usual and come back to it and see what we find. I'm not sure how well this is coming up on camera, but it's the same result unfortunately as the Shell V-Power, but the Esso petrol isn't quite as yellow, so it doesn't show up as well. But yeah, it's at 318 millilitres, which is indicative of it being 2.5% ethanol, unfortunately. I'm also going to do a second test just to satisfy those of you who, despite my numerous demonstrations, you still don't think the pour-through method's accurate. So what I'm going to do is I've got 10 millilitres of water and then 90 millilitres of petrol in this smaller cylinder, which I'll just shake up, and hopefully we see the same result there. Now, I'm pretty sure this will come across just as poorly on the video, but the separation line here is a little over 12 millilitres, so it'll be 12.25, which is the same results as the Shell V-Power again. And just to reiterate that, because this is 90 millilitres of test petrol, 2.5% would be 12.25 mil on the separation line here. So that confirms it with two tests. Yeah, we got, as well as Shell V-Power, Esso Synergy Supreme 99 is 2.5% ethanol, and this means we can't test the octane of the entire fuel blend as it's supplied to us, i.e. this mix of ethanol and petrol, but we can measure the remaining octane with the ethanol extracted from it. This seems to have caused some confusion in the previous video, where the V-Power read 95 RON with the ethanol extracted, and several people commented along the lines of you should report them to trading standards, etc, etc, as I think they misunderstood that with the ethanol extracted we would expect a reduction in the octane. Ethanol is high octane and acts as a booster, albeit a cheap alternative to petroleum based components, meaning we're losing those to still achieve 99 RON. It's useful to know that the remaining petrol is 95 RON without ethanol, because you can still use it as is in most cars and bikes with a standard tune and also two-stroke equipment without having to add a separate octane booster. Plus we can compare it to the other brands we test over time. So let's see how it compares to V-Power. Oh, that's a lot lower than the Shell V-Power. Oh, 91 now. I just say to ignore the first couple of readings, but no, it's 91. Well, that is interesting. 90? What's going on? Well, I wonder if Esso are up to their old tricks again, because if you've been a long-term viewer of this channel, you might remember I did the tests on Esso Synergy Supreme not long after I got the Octane tester, and despite the fact it being ethanol free back then, it was showing 93 octane when it was being advertised as 99 octane fuel, so being supplied lower octane, and that would be something it would be valid to say should be reported to trading standards. So because Synergy Supreme is still advertised as 99 octane plus, I can't see how 2.5% ethanol is adding 9 octane or 9 RON. So we may have discovered yet another case of Esso supplying fuel that's lower octane and advertised. Unfortunately, without a definitive proof of how much that ethanol is adding, I wouldn't be able to make much progress in legal terms, but I can at least give you that knowledge. And where we can go from here is comparing this to the next test, which will almost certainly be the retest of Tesco Momentum, to see how that compares to the Shell V-Power, and if that's also showing 95 octane, 2.5% ethanol. Ideally, we'd like to see it with zero ethanol, and then that will Tesco Momentum will then become my #1 recommended fuel. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Well, so much for trying to keep things simple. It seems that the petrol itself's complicated this video a little bit more than I wanted to, but it's yeah, that's why we do these things. So not only does it appear that Esso Synergy Supreme 99 like Shell V-Power, and we'll have to assume that most of the super unleadeds in the UK now are 2.5% ethanol. There's an issue with the octane as well, because with the ethanol extracted we were expecting 95 RON like Shell V-Power. Again, this is why it is still worth testing the octane of the fuel with the ethanol extracted, despite it showing a lower reading as expected without the ethanol in there. But don't forget, it was Esso in my previous video, so please do check them out. My previous tests of Esso Synergy Supreme, when they were ethanol free in this area, there was still an issue at a certain point. Not only this area, I did a test in the surrounding counties as well. I had a sample from just outside Swindon in Wiltshire, that was the same, probably on the same distribution network, but it was showing 93 RON as supplied as ethanol free. Now, for what we can determine from the Shell V-Power video previously, was that the ethanol was adding 4 RON, at least to the advertised 99 octane, to the petrol as it was supplied, as it's supplied to us. But to add 4 to the 90 or 91 RON that this is displaying with the ethanol extracted, well, that's only going to be a 95 RON fuel in our tanks, even though it's being sold as a 99 RON. Also, we did do a test on the 2.5% ethanol blended Esso Synergy Supreme in the past, the sample for North Wales. Again, please check that video out, because that sample did have ethanol in, because although in the south of England here we've been able to get ethanol free petrol until quite recently, North Wales was a different story, where the sample was sent in from Bangor. The sample did contain 2.5% ethanol. I extracted that, but the Octane tester showed us 94 RON, which is close enough for comfort with the 95 we were getting from the Shell equivalent Shell V-Power. But what we're getting now is that lower reading. So and I've done a few other little tests to make sure I haven't made any mistakes along the line. What I will do, and I will just do a quick video as an update if I do find anything, I'm going to allow the foggy water to settle, retest the octane of that, but I can't see it making that much. It didn't with the Shell V-Power when I returned to that once the fogginess of the water had completely separated from the fuel. It was still reading the 95 RON as it was before, so I'm not expecting anything different here. But like I say, we'll update you on that as it comes, and in the next video, this field test video, where we'll be doing Tesco Momentum, it'll be an interesting comparison. But again, thank you, like I said earlier, thank you to all the new subscribers. If you're not subscribed as yet, please consider doing so, because it helps the channel along. Comment any questions, queries, criticisms below. And also a massive thank you again to the channel members, which I'll be displaying on the screen now. If you're interested in supporting what I do here, you don't have to become a channel member. A subscription, which is obviously free, would be plenty and appreciated. However, if you did want to see the channel develop a little bit more, then please consider doing a channel membership. If you do just want to make a one-off donation, please also check out my Buy Me a Coffee link in the description below and on my About page. But until the next one, thanks so much for watching.